The moment little Emma's words left her lips, time stopped. The bustling cafe faded into silence, the clinking of coffee cups disappeared, and all that existed was a 5-year-old girl with tear-filled eyes pointing at a stranger and whispering the words that would shatter 3 lives and rebuild them into something beautiful. "You're my real mom." Sarah Mitchell had built an empire from nothing. At 34, she was the youngest female CEO of a tech startup in Silicon Valley, featured in Forbes, admired by thousands, and envied by many more. Her corner office overlooked the San Francisco Bay, her calendar was booked months in advance, and her life was meticulously planned down to the minute. What wasn't planned was the blind date her best friend had forced her into on a rainy Thursday evening. "Just one date," Jennifer had pleaded. "You work 16-hour days, Sarah. When was the last time you actually talked to someone who wasn't pitching you a business proposal?" Sarah had reluctantly agreed, expecting another awkward evening with someone intimidated by her success or someone looking for a trophy wife to complement their own ambitions. What she didn't expect was Marcus Webb. Marcus arrived 5 minutes early at the small cafe in North Beach, a neighborhood far from the pretentious restaurants Sarah usually frequented for business dinners. He was handsome in an understated way, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled and a nervousness that was oddly endearing. But it was his honesty that caught her off guard. "Full disclosure," he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it, "I'm a single dad. My daughter Emma is 5, and she's my whole world. If that's a deal breaker, I understand. No hard feelings." Most successful women in Sarah's position might have politely excused themselves. Single parent, ready-made family, complications. These were things that didn't fit into the neat compartments of a CEO's life. But something in Marcus's eyes, a combination of hope and resignation, made Sarah stay. "Tell me about her, Sarah," heard herself say. For the next 2 hours they talked. Marcus was a middle school teacher who coached basketball on weekends. He spoke about Emma with such profound love that Sarah felt something crack in the armor she'd built around her heart. He told her about bedtime stories and princess tea parties, about how Emma asked impossible questions about the universe and insisted that dragons were real because magic has to exist somewhere. "Her mother?" Sarah asked gently. Marcus's expression clouded. "She left when Emma was 6 months old, just walked out one day and never came back. Emma doesn't remember her, but sometimes she asks questions I don't know how to answer." They agreed to a second date, then a third. 6 weeks later, Marcus nervously asked if Sarah would like to meet Emma. Sarah, who negotiated million-dollar deals without flinching, felt genuinely terrified. What did she know about children? Her life was board meetings and quarterly reports, not bedtime stories and scraped knees. But she said yes. The meeting was arranged at the same cafe where Sarah and Marcus had first met. Marcus thought neutral ground would be easier for everyone. Sarah arrived early, her hands trembling as she ordered a chamomile tea she didn't want. She'd rehearsed conversation starters. Ask about school, favorite colors, hobbies. She'd bought a small stuffed unicorn as a gift, then worried it was too presumptuous, too much, too little. Then Marcus walked in, holding Emma's hand, and Sarah's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. Emma was beautiful, with dark curls and eyes that mirrored her father's warmth. She wore a purple dress with sparkly shoes and carried a well-loved stuffed rabbit. Marcus made introductions and Emma offered a shy smile. Everything was going perfectly normal until Emma looked up at Sarah, really looked at her, and her small face transformed into an expression of shock and wonder. The little girl's hand slipped from her father's grip. She took 3 steps toward Sarah, her eyes filling with tears, her small body beginning to tremble. Marcus moved forward, concerned, but Emma was faster. "You're my real mom," Emma whispered, her voice breaking. "I knew you'd come back. I knew it." The cafe went silent. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Marcus stood frozen, his expression a mixture of confusion and horror. Other patrons turned to stare, some pulling out phones, probably recognizing Sarah from business magazines. "Emma, sweetie, no," Marcus said gently, kneeling beside his daughter. "This is Miss Sarah. She's Daddy's friend. Remember, we talked about—" "No." Emma's voice rose, desperate and certain. "Look at her, Daddy. She has the same eyes as me, the same birthmark on her hand. She's wearing the necklace from my dream." Sarah glanced down. She was indeed wearing her grandmother's silver locket, an antique piece she wore every day. Her left hand did have a small crescent-shaped birthmark near her thumb. But lots of people had birthmarks. This was coincidence, childish imagination, nothing more. Yet when Sarah looked into Emma's hazel eyes, eyes that did mirror her own unusual green-gold shade, something ancient and inexplicable stirred in her chest. "Emma, honey," Sarah said softly, surprising herself with how natural it felt to kneel down to the child's level. "I'm not your mom, but I'm very happy to meet you." Emma's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "But I dreamed about you every night since I was little. You sang me the song about the stars and the moon, and you always said, 'I love you to the edges of the universe and back again.' You said you'd find me when the time was right." Sarah's breath caught. Those were the exact words her own mother had said to her every night before she died when Sarah was 7. Words Sarah had never shared with anyone, not even Jennifer. Words she'd locked away as too precious and painful to speak aloud. "What song?" Sarah heard herself ask, her voice barely audible. Emma began to sing, her small voice wavering but clear. "Hush now, starlight, close your eyes. Dream of magic in the skies. When you wake, I'll still be near, loving you forever, dear." Sarah's grandmother had written that lullaby. She'd sung it to Sarah's mother, who'd sung it to Sarah. It was a family treasure, never published, never recorded. There was no possible way this child could know it. The room spun. Marcus was saying something, apologizing, looking mortified. But Sarah couldn't focus on anything except the little girl in front of her and the impossible connection crackling between them. "I need to make a call," Sarah said abruptly, standing on shaking legs. "Please excuse me." Outside, in the rain, Sarah dialed a number she hadn't called in 15 years. Her father answered on the 3rd ring. "Dad," she said, her voice cracking, "I need to know the truth, about Mom, about what happened before she died." There was a long silence. Then her father's heavy sigh. "I was hoping we'd never have to have this conversation." What Sarah learned in the next 20 minutes shattered everything she thought she knew about her life. Her mother, struggling with severe postpartum depression after Sarah's birth, had become pregnant again when Sarah was 2. The pregnancy was difficult, the depression worse. She'd given birth to a baby girl and, in the depths of her illness, had given that baby up for adoption through a closed private arrangement, believing she was protecting the child from her own darkness. Sarah had a sister her mother had never recovered from losing, never stopped loving, never stopped dreaming about. A sister who had been adopted by a couple named Webb, Marcus's parents, who had died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving Marcus to raise his orphan niece. Emma wasn't Marcus's daughter by birth. She was his niece, his late brother's child through adoption. And she was Sarah's half-sister. Sarah walked back into that cafe a different person. She knelt in front of Emma, no longer afraid, no longer uncertain. The little girl looked at her with hope and recognition that transcended logic. "The song is right," Sarah whispered, pulling Emma into her arms. "When you wake, I'll still be near. I'm not your mom, sweetheart, but I'm your sister, and I'm never going away again." Emma wrapped her small arms around Sarah's neck and held on like she'd been waiting her whole short life for this moment. Marcus stood watching, tears streaming down his face, witnessing something impossible and perfect. That was 3 years ago. Today, Sarah's office still overlooks the San Francisco Bay, but it closes at 5 o'clock sharp. Because that's when she picks up Emma from school, helps with homework, and listens to stories about dragons and magic. Marcus became not just the love of her life, but her partner in raising the little girl who had known, with the inexplicable wisdom of children, that they were meant to be family. They never did figure out how Emma knew the lullaby or recognized Sarah on sight. Some mysteries, they decided, didn't need solving. Some magic was meant to simply be believed. Sarah still gives keynote speeches about success and leadership. But now she also talks about the things that truly matter, about showing up, about second chances, about how the family you find can be just as real as the family you're born into, about a little girl brave enough to claim her truth and a woman successful enough to achieve everything except the one thing she didn't know she was missing. Love, family, home. Emma was right all along. Sometimes you do dream about people before you meet them. Sometimes the universe conspires in ways that defy explanation. And sometimes a blind date in a rainy cafe can lead you exactly where you were always meant to be. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of unexpected connections and second chances, if you think kindness and love can triumph over the impossible, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and share this story with someone who needs to believe in magic today. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories that celebrate the beautiful, messy, miraculous reality of human connection. Because we all deserve to find our way home, and sometimes, home finds us first.